I'm the curator of the Esther Klein Gallery, which is located at the Science Center, which is also home to Venture Cafe. So today I'm very excited to feature artist and curator Heather Raquel Phillips to talk about their outdoor public art project called Bottom of the Ninth Pinch Hitter Projects that is installed on the front of their home in South Philadelphia. This is a fairly new project, so there's not a whole lot of content about it online yet, but it really caught my eye on an Instagram post because I was really impressed at how uniquely this project adapts to the post-COVID environment while also addressing important social justice issues. So this project features many artists, and today we have a few with us. Chiara No, Amy Cousins, and Josh Graupera. I'm sure I said that wrong, I'm sorry. They're each going to talk about their piece in the exhibit and their practice as a whole. Now to introduce the curator, Heather Raquel Phillips is an interdisciplinary artist, independent curator, and educator living and working in Philadelphia. She uses a lens-based practice to create static and moving images, text-based textiles, sculptural elements, performance, and installation art to interrogate the social constructs of race, class, and gender. Heather's work has been exhibited nationally across the US and featured in prominent publications such as Hyperallergic and Art Forum. Heather currently teaches at the University of Pennsylvania and also the Lincoln University. So everyone, please welcome Heather Raquel Phillips. Hey, Heather.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks for having me here to talk about this project, in particular because it involves really such amazing artists that are sharing their work with me, allowing it to exist outside. It's such an experiment on my end, so all of that and to be entrusted with these works really means a ton to me. So I'm glad it's being featured and put out into the world a little bit. Hi. So I want to start, I think I have a slideshow for Pinch Hitter, and I'm going to show a little bit of my work, and then I'll go into the slideshow just to kind of give a little background on where I'm coming from. Let's see. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. Have I got my textiles up, right?
Yeah, it looks good.
So I have no background personally in any formal kind of learning when it comes to fibers and textiles. And I guess when I was in grad school, somehow it just kind of made its way into my practice in the way that that can happen when you're in a studio and you're being experimental. And from there, it's kind of developed. It's had kind of a mind of its own, and it's woven its way through my practice consistently in the form of banners, flags, pennants, and I think about these works and what they mean to me, and a lot of them are based in text, but also using and utilizing drawing. So I've brought drawing back into my practice this way, using felt and sequins to draw. And these are kind of like, I'm thinking about award. I'm thinking about high school a lot when I'm making these, about who is considered in these kind of like teen moments, who gets recognized, right? So I'm thinking about walking into a cafeteria or a gymnasium and seeing these banners hanging up all the time, these conference awards. And, you know, to me, there's a really a distance to that thing. as a person who was existing as a teenager in a high school and who, you know, had a lot of angst in me. And so my practice kind of starts there and then like unravels out into like the world of advertising and how that affects each one of us, and how we exist in this world where we're constantly and continually, increasingly bombarded by images and ideas, and how we can just move through that without critically thinking, because we're not taught to be critical, right? As an overall practice. And so these are things I consider when I'm in the classroom and I'm teaching, and bringing these concepts that I use around race, class, and gender, and sexuality, and bringing them through the banner, through the flag. So awarding people and advertising and normalizing these ideas. So this is a pennant series that is, it's around ideas of flagging. So these are all based on fetishes and ways that your sexual preferences would be advertised within a community setting. And these are banners. They're double-sided. So this is one. They speak. I usually have them so that they speak with one another. They're kind of in conversation with other banners that they're hung with. So these are protection banners that I kind of bring in ideas about intersections of identity into these works, and how they kind of work together and can protect one another. And so that's all I really want to show of my own work. And excuse me for my clunkiness and how I set this up. Okay. So bottom of the ninth pinch hitter projects was an idea I came up with in April, I believe. I was walking in my neighborhood, and I live in the Stadium District in South Philadelphia, and I was taking long walks during the shelter in place. And excuse me if my dates are off, I believe it was April. Anyway, I was taking these kind of like 5-mile walks every day, and I started to see the construction of a site for COVID testing. And that was in the parking lot of Citizens Bank Park. It would also have been like kind of early baseball season, which is something that I always participate in and go to a lot of games. So I was walking down there, I was picking flowers. They grow a lot of tulips in the spring, and I was picking tulips every day, and I was walking by the site. I was collecting video footage, watching this testing site go up, then walking by it and seeing the cars lined up, and then seeing it come down. And it was a really heavy kind of experience. I was going through these motions every day, doing something good for myself, and then also seeing all of these people go through, you know, as it kind of still is, but maybe a little less so. It was constantly shifting the information that we were receiving. And so it was really like, it was a very scary moment. And then also like a moment of like gratitude for having my health and being able to walk and explore my neighborhood, and being in a neighborhood where I could be out in the open, but there weren't really other people around. So I thought of this idea of, as I was making things in response to this, of like, all right, well, making a lot. So how do we go about showing work? How do we go about the exhibition of work now that we don't have those spaces of like galleries and our First Friday events in Philadelphia available? And so I came up with this idea, and after a lot of kind of deliberating and not trying to figure out what the name of it would be, came up with Bottom of the Ninth, being that I'm in the low numbers of on 9th Street, down by the stadium, and pinch hitters in baseball are the player that you bring in when you really need to make the run, right? So thinking of my artists kind of as pinch hitters, like bringing in people who can get information and ideas out into the public during this time of urgency. So this just kind of says that. So I thought it could engage the community. It's a democratic way to show art, which is always something I'm interested in. I'm always interested in allowing people into my work in different ways. So if somebody studies art and kind of understands and can pick through the theory behind it and dig into it in that way, that's great. But also, like, I want somebody who doesn't understand or study art, rather, not understand, who doesn't study art, to be able to find their way into the space and either laugh or find some sort of joy or pleasure. So thinking about that, it kind of made perfect sense as a way to bring this work outside and allow my community to engage in it. It's also a way to use the public art form and activate the activism aspect, and merge those things, and adding dimension, adding culture, adding conversation to the community. It enriches space. Art enriches everybody's lives. So my initial plan was to have this all happen or begin happening in June, since June holds so many kind of big days that I thought, okay, it would be great to have these different engagements happen beginning on Loving Day. So Loving Day, this year was the 53rd anniversary of the Supreme Court ruling against miscegenation laws. So for me, this happens 7 years before I'm born, and I'm mixed. So I'm referring to that as like this time where it's not illegal for an interracial couple to be married. And so I thought that would be a great day to begin this. Then there's Flag Day, that was 2 days after that, and Pride and Juneteenth. So we have all these kind of these events during the month. And what happened was then George Floyd was lynched. And so May 26th, I made a fast banner to put out on the front of the house. I had been installing hardware and flag poles, so I was working on getting the house ready for work, and I hung an "I Can't Breathe" banner on the top front of my home. And here's a photograph of it. So this hung outside, and I received my first, I'll say, threat, and I use it maybe loosely, but I take it seriously. Somebody in the neighborhood had made a comment, and I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it was threatening to my home, and the person who owns the corner store had relayed the comment to me and said, if you have a camera on your house, I suggest you keep it on. So I wasn't expecting that at all. And it's maybe a little naive of me, but I tend to keep to myself in my neighborhood. As time would go on, I would see that I hold a lot of different beliefs than my neighborhood tends to hold. So this became a little bit of a tension in a sense, which I will continue to expand on. So opening day rolled around, which wound up being on Flag Day. And I had a little event out front and invited the artists and a few other people to come and sit out front and talk about the work and have some drinks and some snacks. And so I had work by Graupera and Chiara No, which you can't see Chiara's in this photograph, but and then the extra work I put in of my own, since I have a fair amount of textiles stowed away. And I was working on a flag before all this started. I was digging into these kind of the subject matter at the same time, which I will comment on later. But this opening day, I'll wait to go into that. This opening day brought tension because around the corner, there was the incident of the vigilantism around the Columbus statue. So that Marconi Plaza, where the Columbus statue is in South Philadelphia, was being protected. And I didn't realize it. This was the first day that was happening. But as people were coming and going from my house, I was starting to hear about like a crowd gathered and et cetera, et cetera. And I wound up having a couple people stop by who were actually over there protecting the statue. So there was that tension, again, unexpected and a little naive of myself. But moving on, Chiara was one of the first artists that I spoke with when I talked about doing this project, and she and I had been working on some other things together. We were doing an Instagram sort of protest to supplement Americans through this pandemic, demanding demanding for us to be supported by our government. And so she was one of the people that I naturally just reached out to and said, would you be a part of this project? So she created this banner and another one that I'll show, which I believe is in the next slide. I spoke with her about not hanging this banner on the front of my house because I was concerned about hanging anything too inflammatory. And with the response that I got initially, and then with the opening day, I just felt like I had to kind of ease up a little bit in order to be okay in my own neighborhood and to not have to kind of face this kind of feeling when I walked out my door, and just to feel safe myself. So I did take this out to the protests and carried it out in the public, which was really great. So it did get a little bit of life in Philadelphia up to this date so far. And then this was the flag that that I hung of Chiara's for you and me. And Chiara, I don't know if would you like to jump in and comment a little bit about the flag?
Yeah, I can. This one is kind of an amalgamation of two ideas. The first one was the ACT UP flag of silent equals death that has the pink triangle. It kind of started off with that idea. So it was important for me to have the mask be pink, just to kind of show an homage to that lineage, to that history. And the other one's a little bit, I guess, quirkier. I heard Woody Guthrie's song, This Land Is Our Land, maybe like 2 months ago. It just kind of came up on the radio, and I instantly just thought of it as like, oh, like this mask was made for you and me. Just kind of like changing the words to be like a pro wear your mask song, just like how that is like an anti-fascist, pro-America song. And so For You and Me kind of stems from this mask was made for you and me kind of jingle. And the White Lies Kills Lives, I actually started making before. I was making it without a home. It was before Heather actually asked me, or like broached this idea with me with the flags in her house. It was in reaction to Ahmaud Arbery's death. That one is just like, I go running, and I'm a white woman, so I don't really have to worry about my body or my safety as much. And just that one particularly just like hit home with me, because all the lying that happened with those men, and how it took over 2 months for anyone to even know about this. But also I run by myself a lot of the times, and just thinking that anyone could actually come out and do that to someone. And so I was already working on that one. And it is inflammatory, but I feel like I really had to get that out into the world. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Yeah. And I think it's an amazing work. And I just want to like clarify that, not to you, Chiara, because I think,
yeah.
But, to the larger group that was just a matter of safety for me at the time. So, yeah. And Chiara and I have, we created 3 books, correct?
Yeah, we have 3 books together. Collaborating since 2016.
Yeah.
Not on here and there. And so.
Yeah, so we make these books that are actually pennants when they fold out. So they are kind of flags already, which is an interesting kind of circle back too. And Josh Graupera is an artist that I was introduced to through Amy Cousins. And I had kind of just put out a call and said like, hey, like, if anybody's interested, and if you know somebody who works this way who would be interested, please like connect us. So Free Our People was lent to me. And Josh, would you like to share a little bit about this work?
Yeah, sure. I guess kind of like Chiara was saying, like I was already working on a piece like this when I was introduced to Heather through Amy and heard about this project. And part of it is from a mythology that I've created that centers people of color who own like this super galactic landscape. So I was making it as basically a prop for performance. And at the time I was kind of thinking about all of the folks who are in jail or incarcerated or in juvie during COVID. So there was a lot of groups here in Philadelphia who were organizing around that and raising money for bail to get folks out of jail. So, I tried to make something that I thought could work with my own personal practice, but also use the language and the kind of demands that folks on the ground were making. So, yeah, I thought it was great to be able to be part of this project because much of my work and my practice in general takes place outside. or is site specific. You know, I made it and didn't, you know, I wouldn't have had anywhere to show it. So I think, you know, this was really perfect timing to be able to show it, you know, in front of Heather's house, which I think is just really great and really brave to be able to do. So yeah, that's that piece.
Excellent. Yeah. And I love this piece. I don't really have a clear photo of the print too. There's also a print that's a collaborative work between Josh and Amy that has been in existence in my window and might actually find its way downstairs sometime soon too, which is All Power to All People. Yeah. So let me just moving. So this is my piece here. This Harriet Beverly, daughter Harriet Madison Eston, which I call And. This was a piece dedicated to the mixed race children of Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. And I was thinking a lot about the mixed experience and about passing and about the one drop rule and thinking about these works and thinking about these, like this legacy that has been, is part of our US history that has been denied for so long. And I think just really started kind of like getting talked about like through Monticello and the legacy of Thomas Jefferson himself, right? Because there's an entire lineage of people who understand their history, but it's been denied. So I was thinking about who these children were and thinking about Sally Hemings and how she was a concubine, how they romanticized the relationship between Jefferson and her, and how she was, in a way, our first Black First Lady. So that was hung out for the opening day. This is Amy Cousins' beautiful work. So Amy and I met through an exhibition we were in about 1.5 years ago. And this work was hung on Non-Binary Day. And Amy's practice is around these notions of queerness, queer identity. The works are always very kind of utopic and liberating and soft and inviting. And then also like really, they're also like a slap across the face. And I'm gonna just leave that there. Amy, would you like to share a little bit about this piece? You can give the background in a way that I can't.
Sure. So this language comes from a poem by my friend Danielle Redden. And I first encountered this poem at an event she hosts every year called Night of 1,000 Kates, which is this crazy, amazing queer night of performance tributes to Kate Bush. And I work a lot with language in my work, and so often like a piece of language just kind of gets stuck in my brain until I find a way to churn it out. And actually, the Night of 1,000 Kates, a different year than I encountered this poem, 1 year later, that was kind of the last big event that I went to before COVID, and it was starting to kind of loom in the air, but we still had this night where we felt like we could be together and be free. So maybe that's also why I was thinking about it in relation to this project. For me, it has this kind of weightlessness to it. I think as queer people, we're sometimes made to feel like a burden, that we have to ask people to, you know, care about remembering our pronouns or our safety or what have you. But queerness is also, yeah, it's this liberatory thing of being freed from a lot of expectations that society puts on us and to just see each other the way we want to be seen. So for me, this is like a playful acknowledgement of that weightlessness that we can also experience just kind of floating. And yeah.
Do you want to tell us what coracles is? Because I think that's been the number one like response is like, I had to look that.
It's totally fair. And I have to tell you that I also, I had to look it up as well. It's basically like a wooden boat. To me, it's like less kind of significant than just the verbiage of just floating belly up. But I think also I think about queer people's like connection to nature and the landscape that is sometimes denied to us through these tellings of like urbanization and all of that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a question for Amy and also for everyone, but just because I read this in Amy's artist statement. Can you talk about how the use of craft objects historically in protests has inspired your work?
Yeah. My work often stems from histories of activism, particularly queer activism. And I've really been inspired by like a playful approach, even when you're dealing with like life or death issues, basically. And I think for queer people, that has been a mode of resistance, like celebrating our identities when other people wouldn't, and doing it loudly and publicly, and doing it often with self-fashioned costumes, thrift store royalty, basically, is how I think of it. And so, crafting has always been a big part of that history and something that I want to honor.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this. It's a really interesting and unique way to engage artists and the public. So, Heather, how can people engage with this work who don't live in your neighborhood? Are you giving out your address, or is it just if people stumble upon it?
I have been, I've put on my Instagram to direct message me if somebody wanted to get the address. I've been resistant to put my address out for just everybody to have because I am using my own personal Instagram. I just thought it would be easier than trying to gain followers by creating a new one. I have a Tumblr account for pinch hitter projects. So I keep it organized on there. I haven't been up on that in the last 2 weeks, and I have changed out the work several times. But yeah, it is at the intersection of 9th and Shunk. So if you are there, you will definitely see the work. And and you can also see it. I will continually post. I try to post like a large image where you can see the entire relationship between the work, and then like focus in on individual images so that you can get a little history on each artist and what they're doing and what the work is about.
Yeah, great. So most of you show your work in a gallery setting. How do you think that this type of outdoor residential exhibition changes the context of your work?
I mean, I guess I will start. Whenever I make a flag, I always expect it to not be in a gallery, because I feel like in a gallery, it loses its power, because the flag is meant to be like out in the world and seen by everyone. And so when Heather approached me with this idea, I actually got really excited. And I could see and hope for it to get better, like bigger. Like I would love to see like the city of Philadelphia or another city to allow us to put these flags on like posts, like how they put flags in neighborhoods on posts. Like I would love the opportunity to really get these flags out there for more people to see, like going down Walnut Street or something like that. And so I guess like for me, it's like flags are a sign of protest, or it's a sign of identification. You're putting yourself out there. And so yeah, like I feel like my flags, I like to have out in the world, on someone's porch at a protest, somewhere out there on my porch.
I agree. And I think there's something that's really great in allowing these works to exist with the elements as well. You know, I mean, it's like this satin flag that I made for a gallery show I was in existed outside. And what happens to that when it's, you know, just within like the context of extreme heat. I think there's something about that feels really, I don't know, it feels like a space that it removes this kind of preciousness from the object. And I don't think I ever really have considered my work to be super precious, but I do consider materials to be precious in a way. So if that makes sense, like satin to me is, you know, it's like a symbol of luxury or something. And so like having this kind of power and truth, and then being on satin, and then being out in the world where, you know, a bird can shit on it for lack of a better, let alone, you know, the elements that can come into contact with it as well.
Yeah. So Josh, Heather mentioned to me earlier that you choose not to show your work in a gallery setting, or you do more of a community engagement practice. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I'd say like maybe 80 to 85% of the work that I do make doesn't require like being shown in a gallery. And part of that is, would it be possible to share my screen? And I could actually just show a few examples of that. Actually, never mind. It doesn't want me to do that. So, so basically, I work as a community engagement artist. So I work with a few different neighborhoods. I work in my current neighborhood in North Central Philadelphia. I work with an organization called Stadium Stompers. And we're a community campaign that's trying to keep a football stadium from being built in our neighborhood by Temple University. So I'm an arts and media organizer for Stadium Stompers, and I also help kind of steer our general campaign. But I make a lot of documentaries, newsletters, newspapers. It's a lot of work that ends up being ephemera or kind of based around events. And the other work that I do is based in future visioning projects. So I'm originally from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and the part of Lancaster that I'm from was actually created for people of color to move to during segregation, during Jim Crow. So, there's a lot of historical, racial and economic divestment and tension that has enveloped the neighborhood and really created it to be what it was that I grew up in. So I work with a few artists that are also from the neighborhood to do long-term community engagement projects. So I've been working in that neighborhood for about 3 years. and we'll be working there for about another 5. So we're trying to create a cohort of community engaged artists that work with folks to either do workshops or help create more equitable ways to get feedback from folks in the neighborhood about what people want to see in the future, or just offer a space for people to gather and meet each other in a new way. So yeah, all of that rolls together into just doing a lot of workshops. Sometimes it's making zines or publications. Sometimes it's making a movie. But yeah, it generally ends up being with other folks. It generally ends up being outside or at a community center or a church. So, and always the question is, you know, what do I do if a work wants to end up in a gallery or not?
Yeah. So I know, Heather, you mentioned that there was some negative feedback and threats about this project, but what kind of like positive feedback and experiences have you had so far?
I mean, I feel a part of that is that I also, I decided in response to negativity that I would look everybody in my neighborhood in the eye and say hello. And I think that that is really helpful in allowing people then to not feel alienated from the messages being put out front. Also, curating the space so that the works can create something larger is important. And I've gotten positive feedback from people who have seen it, right? I mean, it's sure there's an aspect of my neighborhood that is here, but it's also larger than that. I mean, I'm here. So not everybody has the same thoughts, obviously. And I think that, you know, the important part of that, even when I'm arguing with somebody out front of my house about an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, is that the conversations are happening in person. And I think that that's a really difficult part of today's debates and discourses, that a lot of it's happening through the screen and through a typed text that can't be, you know, it's easy to be aggressive and to not listen and to minimize people when you don't have to look into their eyes. So I think that that has added a dimension that I think is really important in terms of communicating like why we believe the things that we believe. Whether that's helpful to other people or not, I'm not sure. But I think, you know, it's doing something, and whether it's having a conversation happen at the corner store and then that being relayed to me and me having a conversation with somebody because of that, then that's worth something, because it's in the air and it's making somebody think, even if they're resistant to the idea. Definitely.
I think that's a really good point. Thank you guys so much for sharing your work today. We're coming up on our time, but I really appreciate all of you coming, and this was really inspiring to me. I just wanted to say that. So please stay in touch with all of the artists. I put their website in the chat, and Heather, you'll be posting updates on Instagram?
Instagram and Pinch Hitter Projects at Tumblr.
All right, cool. Thank you so much.